totally outstanding Kapre experience. From Steve Knows. My name is Steve, and I live in the Philippines. If you don't know anything about my country, well, that's okay. To give you some background, the Philippines is an archipelagic country located in Southeast Asia, just below Taiwan and immediately above Indonesia. Our country was once a massively forest-covered land until we were colonized and industrialized by Spaniards, later by the Japanese, and then finally by the Americans. Although we do have our own share of ghost stories, monsters are more common here, as the Filipino people had a lot of tribal societies before our colonizers came. One of these commonly known monsters from our folk legends is the Kapre. A Kapre is a huge man-like hairy giant that usually hangs out on equally large trees. They like to smoke, and although not entirely evil, they're really mischievous. They have the power to confuse people, and one of their favorite hobbies is to get people lost in the forests. Well, the folk legends say forests, but I don't know if that's still true anymore. How do I know? Well, I might just have encountered a Kapre yesterday in the city. My condominium is in the middle of the bustling city of Manila, the Philippines' completely crowded capital. It's an old rickety building, and the paint on some of the outside walls is already peeling away due to age. I'm surprised it even has a working elevator. It's convenient, though, because it's beside my school, and the rent is quite cheap, even though I live alone. It's not too bad, actually, if you can look past its obvious age. Before yesterday, I already encountered a few weird events. Not scary, but certainly odd. Here are some of them. The condominium association has a rule to turn off the elevators after midnight, so if you want to go out, you'll have to use the stairs. I never had problems going down. It's when I go up that some odd things happen. One early morning, 30 minutes past 4 a.m., I was going up to the 5th floor after blazing up with a friend just outside the building, when I, curiously, landed on the 3rd floor again. I scratched my head, wondering if I was just hallucinating. A few days later, at around the same time, I ended up walking up straight to the 7th floor. I mean, I guess skipping a couple of floors is fine, but it is irritating if something really is just teleporting me around. My unit is adjacent to an unoccupied unit. If I look out my window, I can see the window and the room of the other unit, as my unit and the other basically form an L shape. I hope that makes sense. Well, every 2 a.m., and for exactly 15 minutes after that, the lights of the other unit would turn on. I know there might be a simple reason for it, but I don't know what it is. I never asked our landlord about it, and as far as I know, the security guards never leave their posts down the lobby. And I never ever watch the room at exactly 2 a.m. I'm afraid that if I stared at the unit's dark room, once its lights turn on, someone or something might be looking back at me. So no, screw that. Another weird thing is I always smell, well, weed smoke when I go out the fire exit to throw away my trash. Sure, of course, some tenants might be using the narrow staircase to get lit, but I've never encountered anyone having a smoke session out there. I wouldn't even dare to smoke weed there because there's a CCTV camera pointing straight at the fire exit door. Well, now let's go to my feature story, to what happened yesterday. It was 11 minutes past 3 a.m. and I was studying as usual. If you're wondering why I'm still awake around these times, it's because I study from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. I would smoke at exactly 4:20 a.m. and sleep from 5 to 12. So yeah, it was just past 3 when I heard someone crying outside. I ignored it until the crying became louder. I got up and used the peephole on my door to check it out, to see what was happening in the hallway. To my surprise, the lights outside just turned off. I immediately picked up the phone on the wall and rang up the lobby. The security guard answered it. He said, "What's up?" I replied, "Hey man, can you turn on the lights up here, on the 5th floor?" "Are they off?" "Yeah, they're off." No it's not." "Yeah, it is." "It can't be off. I'm checking the CCTV now. It's on." "What? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your CCTV? Because I'm sure it's off. I'm looking at it." "Hold on. I'll send up Jake." Jake is the other security guard, and as soon as Bob, the security guard I just talked to, hung up, I went back to my table and kept studying. The crying had stopped. It might be when I was wondering about the lights or when I called Bob. I don't exactly remember when. After a few minutes, the phone rang. I picked it up, and it was Bob again. "Hey, the lights are on." I went over and looked through the peephole. "No, they're still off out there." "Can't be. I'm looking at Jake right now on the 5th floor. He's waving at the camera. The CCTV's working just fine." What in the world? I know this is weird, but Bob must have sensed something in my voice. "Right on it. Hey Jake, can you knock on 504? Yeah, Steve's unit." Steve? Yeah, he's knocking on your door now." I was soon horrified. "Bob? I don't hear anything." "What the The line suddenly got cut off. Do you know the feeling of utter hopelessness? Well, that's what I was feeling right then and there. It felt really weird, but in retrospect, I never ever realized how silent everything was. Although it was past 3 a.m., I usually still hear vehicles and other city sounds outside. I didn't hear anything then, except my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. I wondered, should I open the door? I didn't believe Bob was joking. Why would he joke about freaking lights like this? About something so benign? And at 3 a.m. in the morning, no less. I didn't open the door. Instead, I returned to my seat. That's when everything turned into a crap storm. It's like someone dialed up the weirdness to the maximum level, out of nowhere. The first thing I noticed that was very wrong was the book on the table before me. It was a different book entirely. I had been studying something else, and this book was a different book. I mean, I do own this book. It's not like something else materialized out of thin air or something. But I'm pretty sure I was studying material strength before all this crap happened, not advanced calculus. If you're thinking about that movie 1408 right now, perfect. Because that's what it reminded me of. I heard sounds in the unit adjacent to mine, and although some of you might want to check it out, I didn't. No freaking way, man. I do remember what the sounds were, though. It sounded like a party. There were glasses clinking together, sheets ruffling, a TV on, some shuffling of busy feet, and there were no human voices, no telltale signs of anything decipherable. I think I caught the word boondok from the TV, though, but it's probably just my mind messing with me. Boondok means mountain in English. I turned my attention away from the other unit at that point, because something weird was then happening in my room. Everything seemed to shrink and expand, like I was looking at everything from inside a quickly inflating and deflating balloon. I was just about to run out and open the door when something pinned my foot to the floor. I can't exactly explain this part. It's like there were hands pulling my feet down on the floor. I was stuck. I was getting nauseous that time, like my head was going to explode. I couldn't scream or make any sound at all. I was scared to death. All I could do at the time was try to pull myself up from this force on my legs, but it wouldn't budge. While all of these things were happening, I happened to get a whiff of weed again. That dank, pungent smell. I was about to smile, but panic took over. I don't exactly know the reason why, but I remembered my lolo, Filipino word for grandfather, telling me stories about the Kapre and its giant cigarette. The explanation of Kapre made huge sense to me that moment, like everything seemed to make sense then. I stopped struggling and did what a Filipino kid was told to do when they get lost in the woods. I took off my shirt and turned it inside out and put it on again. The sounds suddenly stopped, and the room slowly returned back to normal. Most of all, I was able to walk again. I felt so relieved. Nothing more happened that morning. When I asked Bob what happened earlier, he told me that right after our conversation on the phone got cut off, I just opened the door and talked to Jake. I don't remember ever speaking to him that night, and as I recall, there was no gap in my memory, and he was looking at me strangely, so I privately asked Jake for more information. He acted surprised and told me that after I opened the door, I just grinned at him, told him something in Spanish, something like, "Hola, vato," and then closed the door again. It was totally insane. And that, I think, was the end of it.